one saw it coming, especially not Patrick. The guy had built half the company's infrastructure from scratch, never asked for praise, never skipped a single quarterly goal, and still, they called him the ghost with a badge behind his ick. That night at the annual holiday party, when the drinks were too free and the laughter a little too forced, someone made a comment, a sharp, ugly thing tossed like a dart across the room. Maybe if the old guy actually showed up to work, he'd get a real name tag. It wasn't funny, but it got laughs, and Patrick didn't flinch, he didn't yell, he didn't even stay. He just pulled out his phone, stared at the screen for a second too long, dialed a number without saying a word, and walked out. That was the last time anyone saw him. The next morning, half the company's digital systems were gone. I shouldn't be telling you this. You're not supposed to know what was on that call. No one is. But I saw the file, buried deep in a folder that shouldn't exist on a network that's supposed to be encrypted. The metadata was corrupted. The audio was distorted. But you could hear it. You could feel it. Patrick didn't say a word on the line. It was the voice on the other end that whispered, "We've been waiting for your signal." And then everything went dark. HR claimed it was a glitch. The board denied the loss of data. But you can't glitch a missing human being. You can't glitch the smell of burnt ozone that still lingers in his abandoned office. You can't fake the baby of one of the interns just 3 months old, waking up at 3:17 a.m., staring at the corner of the nursery, and saying a single name, Patrick. I didn't believe it either, until my smart home assistant turned on by itself last night. It started playing security footage from a week ago, from inside that same company building. There's a figure in the background, out of focus, slowly walking toward the camera, and just before the feed cuts, it pauses. The timestamp starts to run backward, and the screen flashes a message. He was never just the boss. Whatever. He triggered with that one phone call. It's still active, and it's spreading that message. He was never just the boss. It clings to my mind like smoke in a closed room, impossible to shake, impossible to ignore. The feed vanished the moment I blinked, the timestamp rewinding like some cruel trick, but the feeling lingered, like something alive, something watching. Was it real? Or just a glitch in the failing circuits of my own sanity? The thing about memories is how slippery they are, how they twist, how they erode, how the mind buries fragments you're not meant to find. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I'd even seen that footage, or if it had only ever been a dream, a hallucination crafted from stress and long nights chained to a screen. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering over the app that held that cursed file, and the audio cut in and out, the voice on the other end warping between clarity and static, whispering secrets just beyond comprehension. I pressed play again, slower this time, but the voice dissolved into a jumble of nonsense, punctuated by sharp cracks like a needle stuck on a record, each glitch embedding a fresh itch of paranoia in my brain. And then, my screen froze, cracked. Across the corner, a spiderweb fracturing reality itself, or at least my perception of it. The truth behind what no one tells you is never a simple story. It's a maze with no exit, and every step deeper only drags you further into darkness. Maybe Patrick never left that party. Maybe he never made that call. What if the whole thing, the insult, the vanishing, the baby speaking his name, was a fractured memory, a psychotic break disguised as a real unsolved mystery? The more I tried to pin it down, the more it slipped through my fingers like smoke. And then there was Claire. She appeared like a ghost in the hallway of the office building weeks after Patrick's disappearance, claims she was his assistant. But her eyes held a hollow that no one talked about, a sadness that wasn't just grief. Claire's voice was soft, often hesitant, as if she was hiding from herself more than anyone else. She told me things that didn't line up. Patrick wasn't just a boss, she said quietly. He was part of something bigger, but not what you think. She'd glance away when I pressed her, her hands trembling just a little. I wanted to believe her. I wanted answers more than anything, but then I caught her staring at nothing, murmuring words I couldn't catch, like she was listening to something I wasn't. She kept insisting that the call was a trigger, that after Patrick left, something inside the building shifted. "You don't remember everything, do you?" she asked once, voice barely a whisper. "They don't want you to remember. I should have walked away then. I should have stopped digging. But I was already too deep." The office cameras revealed Claire moving through the halls at odd hours, sometimes alone, sometimes speaking into her phone with a kind of urgency that made my skin crawl. And every time I brought up the strange baby, or the missing data, or the voice on the other end of that call, she smiled. Half a smile, like a secret she was both proud of and terrified to share. The world around me started to unravel. I found recordings I didn't make, files that erased themselves before I could save them. Conversations I swear I had, then swore I never did. Faces of coworkers blurred in my mind, replaced with shadows. The baby's name, Patrick, kept echoing in my head, but sometimes it was another name. A name I don't want to say aloud because even thinking it makes my throat tighten. Was this real? Or just the cracks in my mind letting something else seep through? Fear isn't always about what you see. Sometimes it's about what's just out of reach. The whispers, the glances, the feeling that the world you thought you knew was only a thin veneer over something much, much darker. Claire said one last thing before disappearing from the building altogether, leaving a note that wasn't signed but felt like a warning. What you think you know is a lie. The truth is buried beneath the silence. Listen carefully. What they don't want you to remember will find you. And I'm still listening, because if I stop, if I close the door on this, maybe I'll forget. Maybe Patrick will be just another missing name. But if I keep digging, the line between what's inside my head and what's really out there will blur until there's nothing left to tell. Or maybe that's exactly what they want. What comes next isn't clear. But the silence after that message is louder than any scream. I thought I had it. After weeks spiraling through fragments and shadows, the puzzle suddenly clicked into place like a forgotten tune resurfacing from a place deep inside my mind, a melody I hadn't known I was humming. Until the last note landed perfectly. The call, the baby's name, the vanished Patrick, all part of a loop that stretched back further than anyone dared to look. I found the old archives tucked away in the company's digital basement, buried beneath layers of obsolete servers and forgotten projects. There, hidden beneath a sea of dead files, was something so chilling it made my breath hitch. A set of employee records, decades old, documenting a disappearance that mirrored Patrick's in every detail. Same party, same whispered name, same vanishing act. It was dated 1984. A man named Samuel, an early pioneer at the company, vanished overnight after a similarly sharp insult at the holiday party. The parallels were too precise to ignore, like a ghost's echo stretching across generations, and for the first time, I felt the heavy weight of a hidden truth lifting. Maybe this wasn't random. Maybe it was a pattern, a dark rhythm beating beneath the surface of the company's history. I was so sure of it that I called Claire, hoping to share the breakthrough, to anchor myself to someone who might still be real in this shifting haze. But when she answered, her voice was brittle, distant, as if she was hearing the words through layers of static. "You're chasing shadows," she said, "and shadows don't want to be caught." Her words chilled me, but I clung to the archives. Cold facts. I started cross-referencing. Old news clippings with missing persons reports, employee testimonials buried in HR files, whispers of a silent pact buried under company bylaws that no one dared speak of aloud. The company had buried Samuel's disappearance, just like they tried to bury Patrick's, wrapping them both in layers of silence and forgetfulness. Yet, just as I was about to breathe a tentative sigh of relief, convinced that uncovering Samuel's story would somehow unlock the entire mystery, the floor beneath me shifted. A single detail unraveled everything. The archived footage from that same 1984 party showed Samuel standing beside a woman no one remembered mentioning before. She wasn't just any figure. She bore the same hollow eyes, the same tremble in her hands, the same nervous glances away that Claire had. Yet Claire wasn't born until years later. I froze, heart pounding as the screen flickered and warped, the woman's face twisting into something unreadable. Then came the whisper, a voice neither male nor female, something older and colder than anything human, slipping through the crackling audio. We never left. A memory glitch slammed into me. I recalled flashes from my childhood, fragments I'd buried deep, a darkened room, the sensation of being watched, a shadow just beyond the edge of vision that dissolved the moment I turned my head. My parents never talked about it, but sometimes their eyes would flicker with fear, as if they too remembered something they didn't want to say aloud. Was this the same thing? A presence lurking just beneath the surface of every family gathering, every forgotten birthday, every unexplained disappearance? That night, I dreamt of the party, the one from decades ago and the one I'd just witnessed in the archives. The music blurred into static, laughter hollowed out like a ghost's echo, and faces morphed into masks of doubt and dread. The woman from the tape appeared beside me, whispering the same words Claire had. "You're not crazy, they lied to you." But the dream shifted, twisting into a nightmare where the walls closed in and the faces of coworkers faded into a dark void that pulsed with a slow, rhythmic heartbeat. It was as if something was alive in the silence, watching, waiting, something that had been there all along, never seen but always felt. The danger wasn't outside the building. It was inside, wrapped in memory, in silence, in the very air we breathed. I woke with a start, sweaty and disoriented, the echo of that heartbeat still pounding in my chest. When I reached for my phone, the screen flickered and then went black. Then, just before the battery died, a message appeared. "No. Under no explanation. Look closer, you've only just begun to see." The real terror settled in then. The unsettling knowledge that every answer I thought I'd found was just another layer of a deeper, more twisted truth. That archive, those files, even Claire's warnings, they were all part of a larger game. A labyrinth designed to keep us chasing ghosts while something far more dangerous watched from the shadows. And that whisper, "We never left," wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. I realize now that everything, the insult, the call, the baby's name, was never meant to be understood on its own. It was a signal, a trigger embedded in time, echoing through fractured memories and corrupted files, forcing us to remember what they don't want us to, that some truths are buried so deep, so personal, they warp the very fabric of reality around them. If you go back to the beginning, listen closely to the static beneath Patrick's call, watch the baby's gaze when she says his name, or the fleeting shadow in Claire's eyes, you might start to hear it too. That same heartbeat beneath the silence, waiting, watching, reminding us all that the story we think we know is only the surface of something much darker, something alive in the spaces we refuse to see. And now, the question isn't just who disappeared, or why, but what part of us has already been claimed quietly in the shadows of memory. You're not crazy, they lied to you. But the real truth? It's still out there, waiting to be uncovered. I wasn't alone. That truth settled over me like a slow poison, crawling through my veins with the weight of 1,000 silent watchers. At first, I thought the fracture in my reality, the disappearing, and the whispers through static, the baby speaking names no one dared utter, was mine alone to bear. But then the messages began. Not the kind you expect, sent through texts or emails, but the kind that slither into your mind like a half-remembered dream, images that flicker at the edge of vision when you blink too hard, shadows cast by unseen hands. I wasn't the only one caught in this web. Others had been watching, waiting, communicating through the cracks in our shared experience, bound by a secret language only those who had seen could understand. It started subtly, an anonymous email with a single line. "You were right all along. linked to a grainy video clip that felt torn from some found footage from 20 years ago. The footage showed a man I recognized from the archives, standing alone in a darkened warehouse, his face obscured, speaking words that vanished the instant I tried to hold on to them. Then came the symbols, cryptic, looping designs scrawled in the margins of documents I hadn't opened, flickering on office monitors when no one was around. Strange signs etched on walls in places I thought I knew well, but now seemed alien. These were messages meant for me, for us, for anyone willing to see beyond the surface. It felt like a language stitched together from half-truths and nightmares, a code that teased a deeper conspiracy stretching far beyond the company's secrets, beyond even Patrick and Samuel. And with these messages came shared dreams, visions, not just mine, but unmistakably connected to others who I didn't know but felt painfully close to, as if our memories were fragments of a larger puzzle we'd all been forced to live through separately but simultaneously. In these dreams, a faceless observer watched from the shadows, their presence both comforting and terrifying, a constant reminder that we were being tracked, studied, controlled. Was this observer an enemy, or the only one brave enough to reveal the truth hiding beneath layers of lies? Their voice when it came was soft but urgent, threading through the haze like a lifeline. You are not alone. The truth is there, but it demands more than sight. It demands belief. The sense of dread grew heavy in the air around me, thickening every moment with the knowledge that identity itself was slipping through my fingers. Memories I trusted twisted under pressure, colors bled from familiar faces, and the line between what was mine and what had been planted in my mind blurred. Was I being manipulated? Or was my mind fracturing under the weight of what I'd uncovered? Each waking hour felt like walking through fog thick with silence, where the unseen watchers moved just beyond the edge of my perception, observing reactions, gauging fear, calculating control. If Patrick and Samuel were pieces on this board, what were we? Pawns, players, or something else entirely, caught in a game that had been played long before we even knew the rules. Then, unexpectedly, I met Lena. She wasn't part of the company, not in any official sense, but she carried the same haunted look I'd seen in Claire, the same flicker of fear beneath a carefully controlled surface. Lena claimed to be an outsider who had stumbled onto the edges of the story, someone whose family had been touched by the same shadow decades ago. She spoke in fragmented sentences, revealing little but implying everything, her words laced with the kind of intimacy that felt less like conversation and more like confession. "They're watching through the gaps in your memories," she said once, her eyes darting to the corners of the room as if expecting something to listen. "The files you found, the dreams you've had, they're breadcrumbs. But the path isn't linear. It folds back on itself, trapping you in loops of what you think you remember and what you don't." Her presence added another layer of unease, not because she was threatening, but because she was so familiar in a way that unsettled me to my core, as if she was part of my own fractured self. A third perspective trapped between truth and deception. She warned that the company, the government, even the people we trusted were all threads in the same tangled web, a design to keep us from seeing the full picture, from knowing how deep the control ran. "It's not just a story," she whispered one night, eyes reflecting the faint glow of a monitor. "It's a system, and systems are designed to adapt, to hide, to survive." The deeper I dug, the more the mystery expanded, spiraling into something so vast and unknowable that it threatened to swallow me whole. Every document, every whisper, every image seemed to pulse with a hidden code meant to awaken or warn, or trap. The more I pieced together, the more I felt the weight of all those watching, waiting for me to falter, to forget, to become just another lost face in a story they controlled. And somewhere, in the shadows of this unspoken conspiracy, the observer remained, unseen but ever present, a guardian or a jailer, their true intentions as unknowable as the whispers threading through my mind. As I close this chapter, the question lingers, thick and unrelenting. What part of you is real when memory can be rewritten, identity fragmented and truth obscured by layers of silence and fear. Were you always meant to uncover this? Or are you being drawn deeper, trapped in a maze of your own mind, a prisoner to what they never wanted you to see? This isn't just my story anymore. It's yours too. The signs are everywhere if you know how to look. The question now is, will you recognize them before the watchers do? Because the moment you do, everything changes. The screen flickers, the silence thickens, and the truth waits, just beyond the edge of knowing. You were right all along, but the real story? It's only just begun. The truth isn't always a revelation bathed in light. Sometimes it's a shadow, a fracture tearing through the fragile walls we build around ourselves to survive. When I finally stood face to face with what had been watching me all along, the unseen force threading through every whispered name, every vanished figure, every memory that didn't quite fit, I realized the mystery wasn't about what had happened. It was about why. Why this shattering of reality? Why this slow unraveling of self? Why this brutal exposure of the thin veneer between who we think we are and the chaos lurking beneath? Patrick's disappearance, Samuel's cryptic final words, the baby's voice speaking a name no one else dared utter. They weren't just odd events or puzzles to be solved. They were wounds, raw and bleeding, pointing to something far deeper about being human. They spoke of our desperate need for connection in a world that constantly tries to fracture us. They spoke of fear, the fear of losing control, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of the unknown inside our own minds, and most painfully, they spoke of betrayal, not just by others but by ourselves. Lena's face haunted me in those final moments, her fractured whispers echoing in my ears. "What they hide," she said, voice breaking with something like sorrow, "is that the greatest prison is the one we build inside. The lies we tell ourselves to keep moving forward, even when everything is falling apart." And there it was, an unbearable confession from someone who had seen the darkness up close, someone who had tried to fight it but had learned the terrible truth. Sometimes the fight isn't against external enemies, but against the shadows in your own mind. In the quiet before the final call came, a phone call that would change everything, I felt the weight of all the moments I'd tried to ignore, all the memories I'd shoved deep inside where they couldn't hurt me. That call didn't bring answers. It brought choice. To believe in the fragile hope that beneath the chaos, beneath the secrets and disappearances, there was still a thread of meaning, of love, of human connection worth fighting for. Or to surrender, to let the darkness swallow me whole, to accept that some truths are too heavy to bear, and that ignorance might be the only peace left. The moment stretched, unbearable in its intensity, like standing on a cliff's edge staring down into a void where nothing was certain except that whatever choice I made would change me forever. Would I risk everything to grasp at a truth that might destroy my sanity? Or would I retreat, close the file, forget the whispers, and live in the shadow of what could never be fully understood? That choice, between destruction and salvation, between despair and hope, is the cruelest truth of all. Because it means we are not just victims of the mysteries around us, but architects of our own fate, trapped in a labyrinth of memory and meaning, where the only way out is through the terrifying darkness of ourselves. As the final seconds of that call ticked away, I realized that waking up isn't always about finding clarity. Sometimes it's about stepping into the unknown with open eyes, knowing that the dream you've lived might have been a cage, but the world beyond is no less uncertain or frightening. So here we are, awake but still lost, illuminated but still shadowed, searching for a truth that might save us or shatter us completely. And maybe that's what it means to be human, to live in the tension between knowing and not knowing, between hope and fear, between what we remember and what we choose to forget. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.